Welcome to the Business Level. In today's little podcast, we are going to talk about what happened earlier in March. So, as you know, there is a bank crisis right now. And although most of it is averted, it still happened. And how did this happen? Well, you have Silicon Valley Bank. And Silicon Valley Bank, they spend a lot of their money in the cryptocurrency. So, everybody knows what cryptocurrency is. Cryptocurrency is a way of paying. It's a digital coin. But if we look at cryptocurrency in actual world environment, it has no value. It's just a piece of code. So, how did this happen then? Well, people, they stopped trusting in cryptocurrency as much. They didn't trust in blockchain enough. So by doing so, a lot of people withheld their money from their bank. And that's the first step. So that's the first ripple you create. And in marketing, you can know it as two terms, either butterfly effect or bullwhip effect. Bullwhip is more in supply chain, but it's also related to marketing. But this also happens in other markets, such as the banking industry that we just saw. So, what actually happened? People withdrew their money from the bank because they lost trust in it due to the bank's decision to invest in crypto. Due to this pulling out of the bank, the customers went away, the shares dropped enormously, and this also had an influence on all of their partners as well as other banks that were using cryptocurrency. Take for instance Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse is a Swiss bank which, if they hadn't been acquired by UBS, would be in massive debt right now and on the verge of bankruptcy. So this is one of the solutions that came into the market. That other banks are acquiring these banks to stop the market from plummeting. And if we look, it worked. Because in the first stages you saw some banks like Credit Suisse, like Silicon Valley Bank, they dropped by almost 40%. Now it's more normalized at between 13 and 20%, which is still bad, but it's better than going bankrupt. So, what can be done? Acquisition. That's one of the main key elements that can be done in the banking sector. Another part, government support. We all know the other bank crises that happened in the EU, in the US, in APAC. If a government comes to help, it can be solved. For instance, here in Belgium you had a bank called Dexia, and it changed its name into Belfius and became a bank by the government. So they invested so much into this bank that they acquired a majority share of the bank and changed the name to be a Belgian bank only. But what can also be done? Well, you could stabilize the market. For instance, you can make a statement, okay, we have invested into cryptocurrency, but only for such a percent, and it's only being done in or estimated personal value. With personal value, you could say it's actually the profit that the bank makes. And if you use only a percentage share of your profit that you make on a year to invest into cryptocurrency or into art or into other valuables, that's totally fine. Like you have many, and I talk about many banks, who invest in having real estate, in having musea, in having art, in having other valuables like a car collection even. It happens, and cryptocurrency can be seen as one of those investment properties. So that's another way. Do good PR, do a good marketing plan based on it. And the last one, very easy, try to already create a barrier against that ripple effect. You know that things like these will happen. You know that cryptocurrency, okay, although it's golden right now, it can also plummet. So you already need to have a baseline. You already need to have a shield to protect you for if something like this happens. Okay, it can destroy the cryptocurrency market, but you need to think of your customers. Many of these banks, they were either in the tech industry or related to large companies. And it weren't the companies that made these banks crash, no. It was their personal, private clients. So it means that the private clients didn't have their trust anymore. That's also something you can do. You can have a bank that separates into two values. For instance, if you look at UBS, they have private banking, which is done purely for private investors, but they also have corporate banking, and that's purely done for corporate use. So if you separate the two, you can make a different transition on every single part of your internal company. And by doing so, you minimize the risk that is with, for instance, cryptocurrency. If that market fails, but it's only been a very small percentage part of corporate bank, but it has no part in a private bank, then the private bank can stabilize the situation of the corporate bank. It's a very weird situation, but I thought it would bring some valuable insights if I made a podcast about this. Because although you might say banking is far from home, I'm not familiar in this environment, we all use it. We use a bank for our daily purchase of goods. We use a bank to put our savings on it. But from a corporate perspective, we use a bank to do transitions between our company and other companies, or our company and our clients. It's done in both B2B as B2C. A bank is an intermediate that you will always need. So it's very important that you take good care of your bank, that you know which bank you will choose, that you know why you choose them. Why do you choose your bank? Is it because of the benefits they give? That's a good reason. But another reason can be, as a corporate organization, you want to have a bank that not only asks for a low percentage in transition costs and yearly costs, but also has a very quick turnover. So it means that if you pay your bill today as an organization, you want that money to be on the other company's bank account as soon as possible, preferably within 5 minutes. It's not typical for this to happen because, as you know, in a bank how it happens is you give in your transition, they have to sign off on it, then it comes to the other bank, they have to first approve that the transition can enter. Then it needs to go to the bank account of the person who needs to receive the money. That also needs to double check, and then it can be. Then it is literally on the other person's account. But this can be, if it's in the same bank, it can be the same day, 5 minutes to about 3-4 hours if it's a working day. If it's not a working day, the next working day. But if you're talking about, for instance, you're going to another bank in the same country, it can be 3 to 4 days. And if it's in another continent or in another country, it can be up to a week or 2 weeks even. So you see, transitions, they happen based on norms. And that's why some banks give better benefits than others. So for instance, UBS, they have a very huge network. And due to that huge network and they being active in many countries, they can easily just settle. They can easily do a transition in another country for you at the same day because they have a bank there. They only need to do an internal transfer first, and from that internal transfer directly to the other person's bank in the country of origin. So that makes it easier for a corporation to use a bank like UBS. But for instance, if you take Belfius, like I said earlier, they are a private bank, more for private customers. Okay, they do corporations, but in general, it's a private bank. So if you do it through that, it can take up to, well, I have multiple bank accounts here in Belgium. So the fact is, if I transfer money from my Belfius account to another bank account, it already takes up to 4 days. And if I transfer it to a bank account abroad, it can take up to 3-4 weeks, depending on which bank, in which region, etc. So this is banking, and that's also why I say banking is closely related to business. Even though you don't personally have any experience working for a bank, having financial experience, it still happens. And this is why I want to conclude this little podcast with trust in your bank, but choose your bank wisely. And for next week's podcast, we are going to dive more in depth about everything that's happening with the whole TikTok mess, because I've seen that a lot of people are commonly making mistakes, and we will talk about this next week. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.